Welcome to the Burning the Ships podcast, the show where we talk to folks from all walks of life about their passions and them being all in on their passions and chasing the things that they're most passionate about. And today I have a great example of that. I have the bestower of badassery, Miss Jen Josey. Jen is an exceptional human being. I met her about 3 years ago through a mastermind that we're a part of, and the very first thing that stood out was her energy. She 100% brought the energy, the life of the room, just demands attention when you're around her, and she does it naturally, right? She's not trying too hard to do that. It's just her energy is contagious, and that drew me to her and her husband Vance right out of the gate. They were one of the first people I met in Legacy Family, which is the mastermind that I met her through. And one thing about Jen is, with that energy comes a lot of positivity too, right? She'll talk about it in the interview, but she has a teacher's background. She started as a teacher, then spent a couple years or several years in the insurance industry. She'll talk about all that, but everything she does comes back to coaching and teaching, and that's the meat of her business now. She's a real estate investor. She's all those things, but she lives to provide value to others, and that will shine through for sure as you listen to this interview. Before I introduce her formally, I'm going to do our weekly segment, JJ's Joke of the Week. I asked him to give me, or he asked, could he give me a joke every week to add into our podcast. So it's a fun little segment we do every week, and this is JJ's Joke of the Week. Why didn't the skeleton go on the roller coaster? Because he didn't have any guts. And that's JJ's Joke of the Week. So, on to our guests. On today's show, we have Jen Josey, a dynamic force in the world of real estate investing and coaching. Together with her husband, Vance, they established Jolific Homes in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2017, expanding into Jolific properties for rental ventures and later launching the Acorn Agency and Jolific Construction. A visionary in the field, Jen founded REIGN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network, in 2019, creating a virtual education hub for investors, which later evolved into a podcast of the same name. With the release of her first book, From Beginner to Badass, Jen Josey is an inspirational source of knowledge and motivation to thousands of real estate investors across the U.S. and Canada. So without further ado, let's welcome in Jen Josey to Burning the Ships podcast. Jen Josey, welcome to Burning the Ships. How are you?
I am fabulous. Thank you for having me, Jason. I don't know why we haven't done this sooner.
I know.
I need to get you in my podcast as well, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on here. We've been at this, I think your episode will be like 135th episode, something like that. But you may not remember this, but when we were thinking about starting a podcast, you were the first person I reached out to about equipment. And I don't know if you remember that back and forth, but you sent me like links to all the stuff you used, and we got some of that. And but yeah, you were the very first, because I knew you had your podcast, and I'd seen some episodes exactly. And so I just want to thank you for that, because you were the first person I thought to reach out to. So.
And, and podcasts these days, everything's going video. I was like old school, only audio for the longest time. And now I'm like, fine, I will put out my videos. So it's having to put makeup on all the time.
Yeah, I don't have to deal with that. I just show up in a hoodie and my uncut beard and all that stuff. So
I got my hoodie on.
It was funny, Jen. I had, over the holidays, we push out 2 episodes a week. Well, we had a bunch banked, but we had used them all, and I wasn't going to record over the holidays with the guests. So I did some fun episodes like with my family, but I did one with my daughter who's 13, and she was so nervous. Like do I need to put makeup on? I mean, just so nervous about this. And so that was a interesting experience. And she did great. It was a fun episode. So, but
How often do you release?
so every Thursday we we call it a weekly ramble, where it's just me talking about whatever topic is on my mind. It might be real estate related, it might be mindset, parenting, whatever comes to my mind, I talk about it. And those are usually 20 to 30-minute episodes. And then every Sunday we release the interview style episode, which like this. And so twice a week, and we haven't missed a release since we started. So. Yep.
That's the way to go. I only had to delete one of my recordings because he got in trouble with the SEC. So
yeah, we've had 3 or 4 recordings that we ended up not releasing because of just things that came up after the fact. So, but it was better that way. Which I mean, every time I do a recording, whether some bad stuff comes of it or not, I learn something. Like I'm gonna learn something here today, so I don't chalk that up as a loss by any means. So
agreed.
But Jen, let's get right into it. We'll start with I'll let you kind of introduce yourself to the audience at a high level, just who you are, what you do, and kind of walk us through your story. And from there, I will tee up a bunch of questions for you, because I've known you for a couple years through a mastermind we were both part of. We met, through that. But you have your hands in so many things, I can't even keep up with it. So I'm ready to hear about it. I'm excited. So, and I can't let you start without identifying you as what you are most known as, the bestower of badassery. So bestow some badassery on us.
And I trademarked that, so I use it as much as...
I love it. I love it.
So April 1st of 2017 is when, because I know the name of your podcast, so this is very important, I decided that's it. I'm doing this full force. And so by the end of that year, which was December 22nd, I was able to leave Aetna, give them, and I froze again. Oh, no, I'm not. Give them the big heave-ho, and I burned my ship and did not look back. And I'm truly grateful for having the support system of coaches. And I know how important that is to have people in your life that are supporting you, etc. So
can I bridge that gap there? So April to December 2017. So what happened in that short period of time that gave you, like, I'm sure you had the confidence, you had to build it through, the program you were in, but there's a financial aspect to this. So did you acquire any properties? Did you flip any, wholesale any during that time to give you the confidence and the roadmap to, like, okay, I can now do this?
So thank you for asking that, because when I got into real estate, I said, I was one of those people where I want to learn everything before, like, who's going to sell me a house? Who's going to do this? Who's going to lend me money? Private money lenders, what?
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember very vividly, I was with 2 of my coaches. I think one of them, Terry Thayer. We were walking through a property and just at a coaching event. And they said, Jen, why don't you have a deal yet? And I said, well, I'm talking to this guy on Craigslist. And it's a 4,200 square foot home. Let me get rid of this thing on my screen. Are you still there? Okay.
Yeah.
Just had another pop up.
Well,
so I was at an event with 2 of my coaches. I remember it so vividly. And they said, Jen, why don't you have a deal yet? And I said, well, I am talking to this guy on Craigslist, and it's a 4,200 square foot home. It's in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. So it's about an hour and 15 minutes away. And he wanted, I think it was about $55,000 for this property. And anyway, they're like, do you know the price per square foot on that? Jen, what are you thinking? Go get it under contract. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I grab my phone. I'm walking out to the street, and our mutual friend, Terry Thayer, he goes, hey, Jen, don't forget, everything's negotiable. I'm like, okay, everything's negotiable. So I'm walking out there. I have my phone, and I get the guy on, and I said, hey, I'd like to, put an offer on your properties. I said, but is that price negotiable? And he said, sure. What's your number? And I was like, shit, I didn't
think
what a
that
number. I didn't think that far ahead. So I I went back to my high school basketball number, which is 44, and I'm just like 44,000. And he said, sure, I'll take it. I'm like, okay, I'll send an offer and I'll talk to you later. And I was like, I have a property under contract.
Right.
So it was one of those things where we got it for 44,000. And we quickly learned, we were briefly talking about your first project that you had. You learned so much on that first project. And this one, it was like I said, hour, 15 minutes away. In my coaching program, they teach you to use licensed contractors, to insured contractors. This was a lower socioeconomic area at the time. It's up and coming now. And I could not find anyone to get out there and do the work.
Right.
The contractors from Raleigh didn't want to drive out there. So we spent $200 on a new thermostat. I paid the neighbor $30 to mow the lawn. And then we listed it and we sold it for $67,000. So bought it for $4. So we did what's called wholetailing, meaning we had already purchased it. And again, remember I was talking about the lenders. I'm like, who's going to lend me money? We did it out of our self-directed 401k, just because we were too afraid to ask anyone, but we got that first deal under our belt. I also did a quick little wholesale deal in there as well. And so we had the funds coming in, and we had just gotten our first big rehab under contract. And so it was, Vance kept his job, which made a lot more money. And I was able to then run the business full time. That's what we did.
So when you sold that first property, because I think it's fun to kind of peel this onion a little bit because everybody has a different answer to this. But that very first one, you tasted a little bit of success, right? You spent X amount of dollars, 44 grand, 200 on a thermostat, 30 to cut the grass, and sold it for what,
67.
Okay. So you received a check that was actual tangible evidence that you can do this. What was that feeling? Describe it. Like, hell yeah, here we go, or we need to do better. I mean, what?
It was more than what I made my first year teaching, I'll tell you that.
Right.
So, it was just one of those things where, to back it up, when I signed up for my coaching program, I think we paid $30,000 for the coaching program, and that was the lowest, spoke. It went up to $50,000 for it. And I remember my mother saying to me, but you have a perfectly good job. Why would you quit your perfectly good job? And, what is this other stuff in real estate? Because, she had her blinders up at the time. And it just was one of those things where I can do this. I said, and I had a coach tell me this, and I put this, it was on yellow, goldenrod cardstock, because that's all I had. And the quote is, entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. And I had that in multiple places throughout the house, because just like burning the ships, I said, I am not going back. There's nothing that you can do to tell me that this isn't going to happen, because we took that leap of faith. And I burned the ships, I burned the trucks that drove into the water, I burned everything, and I was not going back. So
that's the mentality it takes. So that was 2017. So now you leave in December of 2017. Vance continues working. What was your focus? So you mentioned it earlier, how you were trying to learn everything. Did y'all niche it down to one thing you went in at that point, or where were you at that point?
So another great question, because I'm very grateful to my education program, because they would have certain boot camps where it was a rental academy. It was a wholesaling academy. You had all these different things. So I learned just enough to be dangerous in certain areas. And then if that came across my desk, I would know who to ask about how do I handle something like this. So our focus at that time, to answer your question, was doing the fix and flip. Vance and I were, you have your armchair quarterbacks. We just had a Super Bowl recently. Well, we were the armchair flippers, and we would watch all those flipping shows and say, I would do this, I would do that. And in fact, I actually suckered Vance into marrying me over real estate because we would watch all the shows. And by the way, one of our favorite shows was Flip or Flop with Tarek and Christina, and they're now back on the show. But make big total twist in my my career. I ended up working with Tarek. I was a coach for his coaching program and got to hang out with him multiple times. And I was like, I cannot believe this is my life. So, but anyway, I suckered him into, we were dating at the time, and I said, let's go look at some houses. I'll show you my likes or dislikes, you know, and then we found one, and Vance is like, you know, he's the accounting guy. He's like, well, it's a really good price. And I said, well, you know, I'm not getting a mortgage unless I'm married. And he's like, I'm not getting a mortgage unless I'm married. And my realtor's like, what is happening? And we went that Friday, we got married, put an offer Saturday morning, and the deal fell through. And I said literal words out of my mouth, we got married for nothing. And yeah, literal words out of my mouth. But anyway, I digress. So our focus in the beginning of 2018 was fix or flip. And we did we had a property that was, we did a value add to it. We added square footage, learned a lot. We went to Vegas for a conference, and another investor friend also had his GC license. So we got him a couple gummies and convinced him to be our contractor for very cheap. And he's like, he's never GC'd for anyone else since then. But it was a great learning experience, and that first one went from there. So we started building while that was going on. You know, we mentioned Q before, who is a marketing guru. Love her, Susie Q. And she, or one of the things that I did from the beginning was post everything on Facebook, you know, hanging out with the contractors, funny things or whatever it is, just so everyone knew what I was doing. And during that time, I had someone say to me, hey, my friend's trying to sell a townhouse. Would you flip a townhouse? I'm like, let me go look at it. And then from there, we actually loved flipping townhomes. I have one of my blogs, it's a chapter in my book about the 5-day flip. So I can flip them typically a week, but some of them I'm in and out in 5 days. And it just was a quick moneymaker for us. It was a great way to keep our contractors busy. It was, you know, more exposure, you know, doing all this stuff. And while this is going on, I told Vance, I'm like, you know, I've always wanted to sleep with a realtor, thinking he'd say, which one? And he got his real estate license. And same thing. A couple years down the road, I said, you know, Vance, I've always wanted to sleep with a GC. And he got his GC license. So, you know, it works well. I know how to work.
That's very good.
We balance each other well. Yeah. So then we started doing, my sweet spot was 5 flips at a time and just, you know, keeping that going. But then you said, and back to your original question, what was your focus? Well, we went on a vacation with my cousins and in the mountains of North Carolina, and we were drinking one day, go figure. And I was like, we should buy our own cabin. And I busted into this real estate office, and I said, I want to go look at some cabins. And the lady was like, well, I'll schedule them if you will just, you know, we'll go look at them tomorrow. I'm like, no. Put me in front of the computer. I'll pick them out. I'll schedule them. You know, like, let's go.
Was this on the heels of drinking? So you were during drinking?
Totally drunk while this was
going on. Absolutely. I love it.
And thank God, because, you know, I'm like, also at a realtor's office, you have a designated driver. I mean, I'm not stupid. So we went and we ended up buying a tiny cabin, and that became our first short-term rental. And that's been a big moneymaker for us. And, you know, just to talk about going in different directions. And then from there, we also bought some long-term rentals, and I joined Legacy Family, where I got to meet you. We bought a 12 unit in Southern Virginia, and it's been am I allowed to curse on here?
Yeah, you're good.
Shit show.
Right.
So we're actively trying to sell that property now. Multifamily is probably not going to be for us, but you know, the mastermind group we were part of was amazing. So
yeah.
My niche is that short-term rentals and the whole hosting and providing an experience and stuff like that.
So, couple questions I jotted down. One theme I'm hearing, like you say, is like you believe in the power of community and coaching, right? That seems to be a theme, the whole way here. Y'all invested heavily into that, and the results are what they are. Where does that come from? Is that, you mentioned playing basketball earlier, so you referred to your number. Is that from a lifetime of athletics where you are just used to being coached, so you believe in the power of that? Your history as a teacher, so you believe in the power of teaching? Like, where does that mentality? Because a lot of people are very hesitant to spend money on coaching and teaching. So why was that intuitive for you to do? Where did that come from?
Thank you for asking this question. And I cannot stress it enough. When you invest in you, you are going to make it happen. So when that whole $30,000, what we pay for education program, I was so embarrassed to tell people, but we made that back within the first year and plenty more. So I have always, just from my educational background, being a teacher, know the importance of investing in yourself to get that coaching and to put yourself in the room with those people. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll share. I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast before, but just talk about the value. Like, everybody struggles when they're starting off in anything, but especially real estate, because there's so many coaching and masterminds and things like that you can pay to be a part of. So everybody's skeptical of it, but also they try to analyze it as, what's the ROI? So like, I can look at investing in a house and project what my ROI is on that. Well, when you're investing in yourself in the form of coaching or mentorship or whatever it is, it's hard to calculate that, right? So I think that turns a lot of people off or makes them scared. But my first big investment into a mastermind was Legacy Family. At the time, I was working full-time in a pretty big corporate career. And that was the first time I'd gone outside of that to pay for anything outside of that career, right? And I don't remember what the price was. Let's call it 20 grand a year. I go to the first event, which was in Nashville, still working my corporate job. And I'll sit down at the table, and I'll drop his name. Scott Hannes was at the table, who was a big part of that group. And we did the round table where we had to talk about the one thing that is in front of us, like the roadblock. And mine was, I want to leave my job. I know I can. I'm just hung up, and I just cannot get it all wrapped around my head. So Scott forced me to become very vulnerable at that table. And I literally outlined my finances, like my income, my assets, my net worth, everything. I mapped it out on a piece of paper. And by the end of that, he was like, what the hell are you doing? You should have left 2 years ago, right? And so that gave me the confidence. And then he helped me write my resignation letter a couple months later, and that was it. But my point there is, just that return on investment alone to give me that confidence from somebody that is 5 steps, 10 steps ahead of me, that was the ROI. And then everything else above that has been gravy. So to your point, that investment, just because you can't project the return on it, know that it's a solid investment. I mean, that's no doubt about it. So yeah.
I agree 1,000%. And even, being at that coaching event and them saying, Jed, why do you not have that under contract yet? Same
Right.
thing, why you should have quit, 2 years ago, same situation. And having that coach to push you over the edge, I think, is the benefit of coaching programs alone. But also, and you mentioned, Scott being 5 or 10 steps ahead of you at those, just talking about the tables and then what's going on in your business right now. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have any, multifamily. There's a more multifamily mastermind group. And I'm like, I can't hang with these people. And everyone had the same issues I did. So it's one of those things where, I'm bonding with the person who's just one step ahead of me, who's going to help pull me along with them. So, whether it's coaching, whether it's mastermind groups, I think it's just a great way to really get yourself in the room with these people. And you were talking about numbers, and in real estate, our industry, we all talk numbers all the time. And I was just at a book club at my neighborhood recently, and I was like, so, what'd you pay for this? And people are looking at me like, clutching their pearls. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot where I was, because normal people don't talk like we do.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, yes. Yeah.
So one other question I jotted down here. So you guys leaned in on fix and flipping and acquiring like the shorter term rentals, things like that. Said you were doing 5 at a time. To do it at that scale, you're not using all of your own capital at that point, I can't imagine. So
No.
where did the education and then the confidence come from to start asking for other people's money? Because I know that's a big piece of scaling in real estate.
I think it really flipped for me when I realized I'm doing our friends and family friends. I never worked with family, but I'm doing them a disservice by not growing their money for them. You know, you look at all the wealthy people out there, they make their money in real estate somehow. And so it's a known fact that this is a great way. You have stocks, you have this and that, but real estate is another great way to invest your money. So when it kind of flipped, like I'm providing them with a lending opportunity. And from there, I mean, it just went fast. I think a year in, one of our 5-day flips, I presented it at a meetup group, and they asked me to speak on. I'm like, me? I'm like, I don't, and it put my teacher hat back on. It just got me there. And, even going back to people who are just a step ahead of you, I was a step ahead of some people in that group. So it was another opportunity to pull people along with me. But getting up there, doing that presentation, that built credibility. And that also then established me as someone who does know what they're doing. They come through on their loans, they do this. Now, last year was not a great year in real estate. There's some tough, and we have to pay off loans. This is actually going to be our first time that we are going to be upside down on our first deal, which is crushing, but we have other means to pay our lender back, etc. But
right.
I'm just honest. I'm vulnerable here for a second, but it's just it's part of life. And
well, I mean, if anybody comes on here and they've been doing it for any amount of time and says it's all been perfect and they've been batting 1,000 on every deal, get out of here. Like nobody has had that success. Even my greatest mentors, are struggling in some areas all the time, right? All the time they have puzzles that they have to solve. And that's just that's the nature of the beast. If you don't have puzzles to solve or complex situations to work through, you're probably not pushing hard enough. You're probably not at your capacity or setting your goals high enough. So I'm actually, I hate that y'all are having to go through a negative situation, but it's refreshing to hear you say that, yes, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. So
nope.
And sometimes you got to bestow some badassery on the situation and get through it. So, all right. So that's how you got started. Y'all were flipping. And then at some point, and you kind of alluded to it there, whether you know it or not, but you started gaining confidence in your ability to help others, right? Started being invited to speak at some events. At what point did you truly flip that switch and say, okay, not only can I be a consumer of value from coaches and things like that, but I have something to offer in the form of what has now evolved to a book, a podcast, a coaching platform, a mastermind, all this stuff. So take us down that journey.
A lot. So I did a conference. I'm going to make this super short, but it was one of those, someone was on stage and they're talking about, digging deep inside and all this stuff. And, what is your passion? What is holding you back? What is, the next step for you? And, doing that one presentation that really opened the door for me to go, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy being in front of other people. I don't have tons of experience at the time. There's plenty to learn. And that's how I base everything. But I do have the gift to explain it in a way. So I'm at this conference and we went out for margaritas afterwards and at the break, and I'm sitting there and it's just running through my head, like, what's next for me? And out of nowhere, literally in the restaurant, I go, people need my badassery. And this one chick from the bar, like way over, she goes, "You're my spirit animal." And so I'm like, this is it. And so then the whole badassery thing came along, and that evolved into REIGN, which is my real estate investor growth network. And like I said, it's a network of people to teach other people and bring their own things. It's very affordable. I just did little masterminds. I went from there. I did a Tony Robbins course on masterminds, and then I joined oh my goodness, Jack Canfield, my brain just for a second. His success principles, I became certified with him, and everything is more, because I was hung up on teaching, because again, I don't know everything. Who does know everything? But I can inspire people to go in the right direction. So I just wanted to create this network, etc. And so then from there, it evolved into a podcast. And that was another thing where a friend said, "Hey, Jen, I think you should be on a podcast." I'm like, me, and she pushed me out of my comfort zone. You have those heroes in your life. I see you have hero behind your in your backdrop there, but you have these heroes in your life who push you out of your comfort zone, and they're either in the form of coaches, of friends, of whoever. And so she got me on this podcast, and then I said, I think I could do a podcast. And then what a great life we have. We get to interview people, pick their brains on certain things, and it is awesome. Learn from so many. It's such a great opportunity.
It is, and I'm gonna pause you there because you're hitting on something really important, and it has. I can't say it was the reason I started this podcast, but it has turned into be the number one reason I keep doing it, and that is every single time I sit down with a guest, I come away with a page full of notes that a lot of nuggets are in those notes that I can apply to my life, my business, things like that. I'll tell you this, when we get done recording, you've already given me a nugget that I'm immediately thinking, oh, shit, I've got to go apply this. And so there's always that. And yes, I am providing some value to the listeners, right? By getting good guests on here to talk their story and give inspiration and all that stuff. But I'm selfishly getting a lot out of it. So I'm sure you feel the same way. So,
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't mind saying that. So, so you got invited to be on some podcasts. You had it sounds like a lot of your breakthroughs have come while drinking. So
so here's the next one.
No, you gave your contractor a gummy and he starts doing work for you. We get drunk in the mountains and go buy a short-term rental. Now you come up with your slogan while drinking. So keep going. I want to hear more.
So I was at a conference in Jamaica, and a dear friend, Rob McIntosh. Do you know Rob McIntosh?
I don't know.
He's an older gentleman. His son, Bob, is a big speaker in the real estate industry as well. Bob McIntosh, another ginger. But Rob and I didn't want to go down the rock slide in Jamaica. So he and I were hanging out at the bottom, and we became great friends. And a couple weeks after that, he said, "Hey, there's this guy, Tarek." And I'm like, "Tarek El Moussa?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's starting some coaching program." And, I'm like, and he goes, "Would you be interested in joining?" So it was, Rob, and then my friend Cheryl O'Hearn, and then I was the third coach hired. And that is just another thing where I got in there. I'm like, I don't know everything, but, I can push curriculum. I could, I know the whole teaching side of things. So again, another situation where I wasn't drunk. And I knew more than those two combined who
Right.
Tarek El Moussa was, and it's just a full circle moment. And then later on, Zoom calls with him. This is during COVID, and then speaking on stage and sharing the stage with him. It was just an amazing experience, great exposure, and built my confidence even more to the next level. So
yeah, it's so cool because you go back to, before y'all got into this real estate, before you caught the bug, you were watching his show on TV, and now you're on the stage with him and close friends with him. So that is just and we said it earlier, like, if you're not making mistakes, then you're probably not trying hard enough. I also believe if you're not putting yourself in situations where you feel a little bit imposter syndrome or uncomfortable, you're not pushing hard enough either, right? Like every step of everything I've done, at some point I felt like I shouldn't be there, and I just had to push through that fear and anxiety and realize it doesn't take long to, even if I'm the smallest fish in that pond, everybody's there trying to get better. And I do have some value to bring to it. Even, you mentioned it earlier, and it sounds like it's a big strength of yours. You may not know it all, but you know who to ask. You've built a network of people where if somebody comes to you right now, like multifamily, you said that might not be what y'all do. But if somebody comes to you from your network and says, hey, I'm looking at this 20 unit in South Carolina, I don't know what to do. Hang on 1 minute, I'm going to connect you with blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
That is a powerful position to be in because you've built such a good network. So,
and even through the podcast as well, building that network and just the circles and, real estate alone is such an industry where I just interviewed this gentleman and I had never heard of him, but he's got this massive coaching program. And I was like, I'm embarrassed. I've never even heard of you. But then I was able to read stuff about him on Bigger Pockets and things like that. And it's funny how the circles, going back to the beginning where I was a music teacher, music circles are very small. Everybody knows each other in that industry. This is such a vast, industry where we can, like I said, meet people and connect them. I definitely think I'm a connector. So that is, and you are as well.
I enjoy it. And again, this platform with the podcast, I mean, it's a good test or way to see the psychology of a lot of people because I've reached out. So I love to hunt. I love everything outdoors. This podcast, I'm trying to have people on that have, like, they're all in on something. They're passionate about something. They've left everything else behind. So I've started reaching out to people in the outdoor industry that have big followings and big networks, and they have big shows on the Outdoor Channel and all ESPN and all that. And just offering them to come on the podcast. And almost all of them have said yes. So I'm getting to have these conversations with people like you. Just a few years ago, I'm watching saying, man, I wish I could hang out with them and talk to them. And it gives a good platform to connect and then hear their story and kind of dig into it a little bit. So I want to get
a job at what you do as well.
Yeah.
I love that you're all over the board with different entrepreneurs and and it feeds into all the different industries. And, it also goes back to that mindset. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, you're good. And that's kind of where I'm going to go now. It's into some of the mindset stuff as we kind of, so a lot of the things you've kind of very passionately talked about, it takes a different, not anybody can do this. Like, I don't believe that, right? I think anybody can be trained to do certain aspects of it, but you've got to have a next level, I don't know, like a next level ability to overcome adversity, rejection, fear, get around all those things. Where in the hell did that come from with you? Because you went from like a music teacher for a long time into an insurance industry, has nothing to do with real estate, and you just kept chasing something until it clicked. Where does that come from?
Who knows?
Right. Most people don't know, So.
We loved watching the flip shows. I knew I had a passion for those things. I just, I really don't have a great answer for that. I think I've been very lucky by who I've had around me to maybe see things in me that I didn't know was there. Like my friend Rob McIntosh, who said, hey, Jen, I think you'd be a great coach. I'm like, me, coach? And just not know that. My friend Devin, who got me started in podcasting, where I'm like, I've never been on a pod. It's just so putting those people around me who push me to maybe see things that I don't. And now I get to do that as a coach, as, through my REIGN Mastermind, I see things and I'm like, you really need to push through here and do this. And, so I get to give that back as well.
Well, I can, as an outsider, viewing what you're doing, I can tell you what one strength is probably the biggest one I can see is your energy. You bring, like, I think the first time I met you might have been in Nashville at that first Legacy Summit I went to, and my partner Bill and I had our wives with us. We hung out at a bar that night, and we all left away. We were walking back to the hotel or whatever, but both wives were like, Jen was amazing. She was fun. She was awesome. Like, So you bring that energy that attracts people to you, right? And you don't have to know much about anything, which you obviously know a lot about a lot, but if you can draw attention and attract people to you, then you can play that role as connector that you do so well. So I think and that gives you the confidence to break through fear, to break through anxiety. So I think that plays a big role in it for you, I'm sure. So,
It does. And then on the flip side, I'm exhausted after everything. I do want to give 110%. If someone's paying me for a coaching call or paying me to be part of a mastermind, I want to give 110% because they deserve it. But then later I'm in bed by 8:00. Right. People are like, oh, we're doing this. I'm like, ooh, that's way past my bedtime. So
that's hilarious. So let's talk about, you've got a book, right?
I do. Let's
talk about that a little bit. What is it and what's it about?
It is From Beginner to Badass, and it is I do vision boards at the end of every year. I post them in my office, and for a couple years, I threw on there just because I had space. I'm like, I'm going to write a book. It wasn't really too intentional about it, and every Tuesday I have a group that we do group coaching with my work husband, Bud Evans. We just had it right before this call. It's called REI Roundtable, and it's kind of a group coaching. And at the beginning of last year, we had to announce our BHAGs, our big, hairy, audacious goals. And I looked over and I said, I'm going to write a book. Like, now I got to do it because I'm kind of leading this group. And so I started, here and there. But honestly, what I did was I wrote great blogs before this Chat GPT, where everybody wrote, the Chat GPT writes most of the stuff out there right now, including my intros on my podcast and my badassery bestowments that I do on my podcast, all done on the Chat GPT. But back in the beginning, I wrote all of them. So I took those stories and compiled it into a book. And it's, it's nice to get a little check from Amazon every once in a while and, just have it show up. But it's all of my blogs thrown together in certain chapters and put in there in a good way. But it also talks about mindset. You're, coming from a fixed mindset and just how to move past that. And, I'm very picky about certain things. Like, I hate barn doors. I'm sorry if you have a barn door, but do not put them on a bathroom ever. So, because then you hear everything that's going on in there. And I kind of like my husband. I don't need to be hearing those things. So, I have things about design features, and I thought it was so stupid to put microwaves in the island, and then I realized, they're drawer microwaves. That makes a little more sense, so very opinionated and hard-headed on certain things, but that's also my style, and people either love it or they don't, and hey, move on.
I love barn doors on barns. That's the only place I like them. We stayed in an Airbnb that had barn doors to every single room, and they all bounce back when you try to shut them. And like the bathrooms, like you mentioned, it's terrible. But anyway, we could talk for an hour on that. So the book, and you mentioned, the book was kind of a result of the motivation of sharing a goal. So that's one thing I've leaned into. So let me back up a little bit. In my corporate career, I'm always had big goals, but they were shared kind of internally to my team, and whatever the case was. It was never a public goal. I've really leaned into the last 2 years publicly sharing my goals, both business goals, and I'll put numbers around these goals and share them with the whole world to see. My personal goals, all the way down to like number of date nights with my wife. Like, I'm being very specific, and my outcomes, and it's just a 2-year period that I've been doing this, but my outcomes have been so much better because I'm forcing that extra layer of accountability. I saw someone, I shared this on another podcast last week, but last week I ran into somebody at the store that I hadn't seen in 10 years. And they just follow me on social media. And they said, how you doing with whatever the goal was? And I was like, how the hell do you know it is? Oh, I saw the post on social media. So just that conversation alone tells me I can't fail. I have to not give up on this goal. And so what are your thoughts about, and you kind of alluded to it, but sharing goals publicly to force that accountability?
I mean, huge. The numbers are, if you write down your goal, you're 42% likely to achieve it. But if you share it with others, and that number ranges between like 80 to like 92%, if you share it and announce it with other people and you have that accountability factor, you are more likely going to hit that goal. So, be ready with what you're going to say, where I'm like, I wasn't ready to announce my BHAG on this call, and I just went, I'm going to write a book. And then I'm like, shit. But I ended up doing it by April of that year. So
That's awesome. I too I've had it for a couple years now in my head. Like, I want to write a book, and I could go several different directions. My problem with writing a book is I'm so scatterbrained. Like, I might start the book talking about burning the ships, and I might end it talking about a hunting trip I was on. Like, I've got to really niche it down to what I want to focus on. But eventually, it's not on my goal board yet, but I will write a book eventually. So
write blogs and then
yeah,
make them your chapters.
I don't even know where to start with that, but that sounds like a great idea.
Start the Chat GPT.
Yeah, I have a buddy of mine that did a This is really interesting. Do you know Jennings and Yaden Smith?
No.
They do a bunch of multifamily syndication. They were a legacy family for a while. They have their own mastermind now. But Yaden, for the last 12 years, has journaled every day, and he does it electronically. So he speaks into his phone into an app. It dictates it all into, and he adds images to it. Well, he took like 10 or 12 years of journal entries and took it to a publisher and had them make a book for his kids. So it's like a daily, and it it's not every day in there, but it kind of compiles like months at a time what he was thinking about, what he was going through, and stuff like that. So I just thought that was an interesting way to write a book. He did it through journals.
Is he a podcaster?
Jennings' brother has a podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're in South Carolina. They're good people. I'll introduce you because they'd be a good guest on your podcast. Both of them would be. So I want to kind of wrap things up with. I want to go back to your mastermind. And before I do that, I want to plug your YouTube channel. So we're going to drop that link. But I know that the podcast is rolling. It's on all platforms. But you are recently trying to promote your YouTube channel, and I know you have a lot of good content on there, so I want to promote that. I want to encourage everybody listening to check the link out in the notes when you get done with this. But I also want you to go back to your mastermind group, and I kind of want you to speak to the folks that speak to the Jens of the world back in April of 2017, or let's go to March of 2017, that they have this seed in their head. They want something different, and they just don't know where the hell to start. How can you help them and kind of talk them through the next steps there?
So the mastermind itself is more for people who are kind of already into real estate. So it would have been Jen in maybe February of 2018.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Who has maybe done some coaching, and it is evolved over the years. So I started the mastermind in like 2019, and it was, based on, because I love the mastermind, because when in a mastermind, the smartest person in the room is never as smart as all the people in the room.
Amen.
And that's a John Maxwell quote, by the way. So it's one of those situations where I can kind of coordinate those things. I can be that connector. And I love them because I learned so much. You remember sitting at the round tables with Legacy family and everyone in there. And by the end, everyone's like, I'm going to help you with this. You're going to help me with this. And it's just one of those things where I love that type of setting. So I started as just a 4-week deep dive with these Tony Robbins things, and also with the Jack Canfield stuff, and just to get people to open up, your life purpose statement, just creating a life purpose statement, not your why, because I don't have kids. I'm allergic to children because I was a teacher. I developed that allergy. And so I proudly take my birth control, but the when I would be in rooms and people would be like, what's your why? Oh, my kids. And I was like, I really hated it. But the Jack Canfield version was your life purpose statement, and creating that and then having that as your compass through everything you do. So it was things like that. Then it evolved into a podcast because I already had the LLC. So I went from there and did that. And then I started coaching with Tarek, and his coaching program shut down in July of 2024. So all the students from there were like, what do we do now? And so I opened them up to the Real Estate Investor Growth Network, and you can go to reignmastermind.com to check it out. It is affordable. We talked about the whole coaching aspect and people paying a lot of money. And when you invest a lot, it also brings up that pressure for you to actually get things done. So I'm on the flip side. I make it super, super affordable. It's $9 a month. Maybe someday I'll raise it. I'm not sure. But in there, it's more of I have great people in the group who are experts. Casey, you know Casey. So she runs she does master classes. I do a master classes called, this is a shocker, it's called Jen and Juice.
Love it.
And, so we just charge $10 for these mastermind classes. So it's all a la carte. We do have 2 calls a month. We have typically a guest speaker that comes in. And then the second call in the month is a mastermind. And we have a topic. And this month we're doing marketing. It's just a focus. And so people are now sharing their marketing ideas. And we go into breakout rooms. And it's just one of those things where you have people across the country. It's great if I have one member who lives in California, can't afford anything in California, but he invests in Arizona. So he is hooked up with another REIGN member who lives in Arizona, who's his boots on the ground there. So it's just a way to connect with people. It's a safe space. It's a place to announce your goals as well. So we get the opportunity for you to announce it, because you're going to have that 80 to 92% chance more of achieving that goal when you have that accountability factor as well in there. So and when you're a REIGN member, if you have an area of expertise, I have a really good wholesaler in there. And so she runs a mastermind on wholesaling. So when a REIGN member is ready to graduate and start doing their own master classes, they do it once a month and things like that. So people can kind of shop around and do it a la carte.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, godly day, $9 a month to enter the group like that. Number one, you need to raise your prices. But number two, folks listening, get in while it's $9 a month. That is an absolute steal.
Right now, it's $99 down and $9 a month.
Right.
But
still a steal. So no, I encourage everybody to check that out. Again, we'll drop those links below. Moving forward, Jen, it seems, just hearing you go through everything, seems like your true passion is helping people and teaching and coaching and connecting. Are you going to lean more into that in the years to come, you think, or are you guys still actively flipping, buying, and building your portfolio?
So our businesses, we have our flipping business, Jolific, which by the way is Josey plus prolific. So it's a mashup, Jolific. So Jolific Homes, and then our rental company is Jolific Properties. We started Jolific Construction. We also have an agency, and we're in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is the city of Oaks. So we have the Acorn Agency, and it's for investors to hang their license somewhere, and we just do flat fees for them to list their properties. That we're not like real realtors. I don't have my real estate license. Vance does. I hate taking tests.
Right. You just want to sleep with the realtors.
Exactly. And a GC. Don't forget the GC. That was the big one. And so we have those businesses, and we got into our first new build on accident, and it was our highest profit. We made $267,000. We hit it right at the best time at the end of COVID, when people are like, take my money. And so it landed, in the right spot. So we're doing another new build right now, which we enjoy. We pulled the drywall down and now we have poly pipes or whatever, Another focus for us is going back to creating experiences for people. And my BHAG for this year, and I'm announcing, is I want to buy either a piece of land or something where I can convert it into, I say tiny home village, but it's going to be much cooler than that. I like little A-frames. I like maybe little tree houses, but something to provide an experience. They're going to be small. Again, my phobia against kids is it's going to be for couples and pets and dogs. So it's going to be fenced in. I want at least 5 acres, but more like 10 acres. And so I'm actively looking for something. I want it to be near water so that we can have some boating stuff and things like that. So then I don't have to run it through, Airbnb and then just do my own site, etc. So
Really cool.
that's my BHAG for this year.
I wrote it down, so I'm gonna hold you accountable for it. So that's awesome. So are you looking, is it going to be like the land you're looking for near Raleigh, like we're drivable from you, I guess? Okay.
Yeah, within 3 hours.
Cool deal. Well, Jen, I really appreciate you coming on. You are, as I mentioned earlier, you bring the energy. For folks listening, undoubtedly you hear that. And I think, like, I'm always digging and trying to find the inspiration. I didn't have to dig very far with you. I mean, you literally burned the ships on a teaching career. You burned the ships on what sounds like you were moving up in a corporate insurance career, which I was in insurance as well, so I'm very familiar with that ladder. And then you continue to some degree burning the ships as you go, right? You're evolving, and that's what it's all about. You're not, you might have flipped that first house, did a wholesale and made, 20 grand or whatever you made there. But you're not necessarily doing that anymore, but that led you to the next step and to the next step. And now you're having an impact on so many people. And what I keep, there's a common theme I hear with a lot of my guests, especially the ones that are entrepreneurs. When they start out, and I was this way, you just feel like you're never going to get there. You're always chasing something. You never get there. But look back at your journey. It's 2025 now. So in April, that will be 8 years from where this thing started for you. That's not a long time.
No.
And for folks that are just trying to figure it out, where to go, just take the next step. And 8 years, it might seem like a long time. Hell, 1 year seems like a long time sometimes. But Jen, you're a great example. We're in the same boat where blink of an eye, and now you're impacting people, and you're really making waves in this world that 8 years ago you didn't even know where the hell to look. So I mean, seriously, and that's inspirational. So I appreciate you walking us through that and sharing everything you have going on and giving me your time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, I got to give a shout out to you, Jason, because you have a great thing going here. I love the topic of your podcast, and I thought, oh, my story is so similar to everybody else's, where I'm like, I quit corporate America and I did real estate, and but you put things on you put a great spin on things. You're such a great conversationalist. You're so good at this, and I, like you, love being able to spend time with people, and I appreciate you allowing me to spend time with you today, and I look forward to having you on the REIGN podcast.
I can't wait.
Your badassery.
Yeah, can't wait. You've motivated me to go have a drink now and see if I can come up with the new ideas.
It helps.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Jen. And again, thank you for coming on Burning the Ships. And we'll see you guys next time.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.